Hello. Today we are going to begin talking about the digestive system, and we're going to learn how energy and enzymes affect the digestive system. So you can follow along on the notes that I have posted under topics, or you can write things down and pause this video as we go over it. So the very first thing we need to go over is the function of the digestive system. So the function of the digestive system involves breaking down food. The food you eat is too large to be used by the body, so we need the digestive system to break it down into tiny little pieces that we can use, right? What type of chemical reaction breaks things down into tiny pieces? That would be a hydrolysis reaction. So the digestive system is doing a lot of hydrolysis. The digestive system also then has to take what you break down and it has to put it into your bloodstream, into blood circulation that I'm highlighting with the pointer here. So that's another function. It has to do something with the waste, so it has to then save the waste products that cannot be digested and then eliminate those from the body. There are two main parts to the digestive system. The first part is called the alimentary canal, and the alimentary canal is a huge tube. You can think about this tube as going from your mouth all the way to your anus. And even though it's not one straight line, it is basically one very long tube, over 20 feet, in fact. The parts of the alimentary canal, which you should know, involve your mouth, the pharynx. The pharynx is the part where your mouth and your nose cavities meet, your esophagus, which goes down your throat and through your chest, your stomach, your small intestine, the large intestine, and finally the anus. That is the alimentary canal. It's literally the tube that food travels through. Now, more things have to happen than just allowing your food to move. We have to secrete things into the alimentary canal. And that is what your accessory organs are for. Your accessory organs are going to secrete things into the alimentary canal to help digest them. Your liver, pancreas, gallbladder, and salivary glands are all accessory organs. And these are all things that are going to secrete something that goes into your alimentary canal. So for example, food will not move through your liver. Your liver is solid. Your liver is not a tube. But the liver will make something that gets secreted into your intestines. Your intestines are a tube that food does go through. So here are the parts of the body, specifically the digestive system, that you need to know. So we've got the mouth up here. Along with the mouth, we have the tongue, we have the salivary glands, we have the pharynx, the throat, goes into the esophagus. And from the esophagus, the food moves into the stomach. From the stomach, food moves to the small intestines down this tube right here, and this long winding tube. And then we have the liver. The liver is going to secrete things into the intestines. We have the gallbladder kind of hiding behind the liver. That's going to help the liver. Behind the stomach is this yellow thing. That is the pancreas. That's going to also secrete things into the intestines. After the food moves through these small intestines, it's going to move into the large intestines, and then it is going to be expelled out the body. So let's begin at the beginning. Basically, we're going to begin with the mouth. The mouth is where all digestion begins. When you start chewing food, that is called mechanical breakdown. Mechanically digesting food is when you physically tear the food apart with your teeth. Your tongue also helps to smash the food a little bit. So your teeth and tongue and mouth, the hard palate, that's the hard part, the upper part of your mouth. That's also going to help smash the food. So your mouth mechanically breaks down food. Right? That should be pretty obvious. When you chew food, you're tearing it apart. There's also a chemical breakdown. Now, when you see the word chemical in the digestive system, we are referring to enzymes. Enzymes are what chemically break down food. So chewing is mechanical, but we also have enzymes in our mouth. Those enzymes are produced by our salivary glands. And our salivary glands are going to release a certain enzyme in our saliva that helps to break down food. Specifically, our salivary glands contain amylase. Amylase is going to help break down starch into sugar. So your mouth is going to mechanically break down the food you eat, and it is also going to start to break down carbohydrates. Carbohydrates get broken down in your mouth. Now, are proteins going to be affected by amylase? The answer to that would be no, because amylase is specific. It's an enzyme. It can only work on starch. It's not going to work on other things. So proteins cannot be chemically digested in your mouth. What about lipids? Lipids, again, lipids are not carbs, so lipids cannot be chemically broken down in your mouth either, because amylase can only work on starch. It can only work on carbohydrates. So mechanically, your food is being broken down, and then chemically, carbs are being broken down in your mouth. And that's it. That's the only thing that's being chemically broken down so far. All right, here we have an example of amylase. You've actually seen this picture before. Amylase is specific. This is actually, we're calling this sucrase, almost the same thing. So this enzyme is going to fit our carbohydrate. The carbohydrate fits right in picture 2. And then the enzyme is going to put stress on that bond, and it's going to break the bond right in half. And the two things that are left, glucose and fructose, are going to move on, and the enzyme is free to be used again. All right, what happens after you chew up the food in your mouth? It is pushed by the tongue into your pharynx, that is your throat, and then the esophagus is going to contract its muscles and move the food into your stomach. Here we have an example of that happening. So the food is in green, your mouth has chewed it up, it is now like a mushy paste, and the muscles in your mouth and in your throat are going to squeeze the food down. Now there's a big issue in your throat, because you have in front, where I'm pointing, you have a trachea, and behind that is your esophagus, and they both open up into the mouth. You do not want food in your trachea. Your trachea is for air, and you don't want food to block it. So you have this special part called an epiglottis right here in blue. The epiglottis, as you can see in the picture, will fold itself over when you swallow to block the trachea. This prevents you from choking. Notice how the epiglottis here is blocking off your trachea, so the food is staying in the esophagus, which is the tube in the back. So if you choke on something, something has gone wrong there, and the epiglottis didn't block off the trachea well enough. So the food is moving down and it's staying in the esophagus, and your airway is clear. So evolution has evolved a way to prevent us from choking. That's clearly beneficial to us. Once the food gets into the esophagus, your esophagus is going to squeeze. Now, your esophagus is a tube. So what I like to imagine those popsicles that you buy in a clear plastic sleeve. You buy them and they're liquid, and then you stick them in the freezer and they become solid, and you cut the top off and then you kind of push them up like that. That's kind of what your esophagus does in the opposite direction. Your esophagus is a tube, and then right here, the beginning of the esophagus pinches shut like you see, and as it pinches shut, it pushes the food forward. So your food doesn't actually fall down your esophagus thanks to gravity. What happens is your esophagus pinches and pushes the food down. And this process is called a peristalsis. This is a term you should know. Peristalsis is used by the esophagus to force food down into your stomach. All right, so a few questions to review. How does the mouth contribute to digestion? And then question 2, what are the key chemicals and enzymes in digestion? Describe in the mouth the effect of chemical digestion on food. Use the term substrate, enzyme, saliva, and product, and answer those questions now. So for question 1, how does the mouth contribute? You should have said something about mechanical digestion, and you should have also talked about chemical digestion of carbs. For the second question, you should have said something about how the mouth produces saliva. Saliva contains the enzyme amylase, which will use a carbohydrate substrate to break down the carb into monomers that will be the product, something like that. Okay, and the last for today, but certainly not the end of the digestive system, is we've got the stomach. Food enters your stomach, the most famous part of our digestive system. Stomach is going to connect your esophagus. Here would be your esophagus where I'm pointing. Your small intestines would be at the bottom, and your stomach is like a muscular pouch that can expand. Your stomach has what's called a pyloric sphincter. This is like a little muscle that's going to close off the small intestine, so food stays in your stomach for a little while. Also, if you take a look at the stomach, your stomach is muscular, which means it can shrink and it can grow. So you can actually, your stomach can change its size slightly. And you can tell this when you eat a lot, your stomach kind of expands a little bit. And that's because your stomach is muscular. The muscles are also used for churning. So when you eat and you kind of feel your abdomen kind of moving a little bit, that is your stomach kind of crushing the food. The stomach has three major functions. So it is going to be food storage. When you eat, your food can sit in your stomach for a while. And it's going to gradually release tiny amounts of food into the small intestine, so your small intestines don't get overwhelmed. Your stomach is going to mechanically break down food because it's made of muscle. It's going to churn and churn and churn that food. And your stomach also has an enzyme called pepsin. Pepsin starts with a P because it breaks down protein. Carbs were broken down in the mouth, and proteins are getting broken down chemically in the stomach. So pepsin is an enzyme specific for proteins. What haven't we broken down yet? Yeah, you may have noticed we haven't broken down lipids yet. We're just not that far in the digestive system. We've only broken down carbs and proteins. All right, there is your stomach. All right, now your stomach has to secrete certain liquids in order to work. Your stomach is acidic, and this is good. It kind of helps your immune system. If you eat something that might have some germs on it, the acidity can offer you some protection. There's also pepsin. So pepsin likes the acidic environment. And so pepsin can do its job of breaking up proteins into its monomers. Those monomers are called amino acids. So pepsin can do its job. And then you have a bunch of mucus. That sounds pretty gross, right? Mucus in your stomach. But this is actually really important because think about it. You have a stomach filled with hydrochloric acid. That is not good for your tissue. So your stomach is coated in mucus, and that thick mucus protects the stomach from the acid. People who have ulcers, what's wrong with them and why they have some pain there is because the mucus has been eaten away by bacteria. And so the acid is actually eating away at their stomach tissue, and that's where the pain comes from, the interaction of acid on the membranes that line the stomach. And that's why we need mucus. It's really important. Food in the stomach is converted to something called chyme. So chyme is the now very liquidy food that's now very acidic because it has been churned away in the stomach. And there we have the stomach. So right now the food sitting around here in the stomach, and little by little the stomach is going to release it so it can go into the small intestine. All right. And our last learning goal, explain where and how each chemical and enzyme act. So our question, which of the following will be chemically digested in the stomach? Is it amino acids? Is it starch? Is it a triglyceride? Or is it protein? And the next question, I can explain the function of the organ, summarize the function of the stomach. Answer these now. For question 1, you should have said proteins. Proteins can be chemically digested in the stomach. Some of you may have said amino acids, but amino acids have already been digested because they are the monomers. Starches, that's the mouth, and triglycerides are a lipid. We have not digested lipids yet. For the function of the stomach, you should have said something about mechanical digestion and chemical digestion of proteins. We're going to stop here for now. We're going to continue the digestive system in the next few days. So let me know if you have any questions.